much. Right, so I'll try and, I think we've got about half an hour, so I'll try and give time for a question and answer at the end. Firstly, my name's Adam Clayfield. I'm Group Commercial Director of Cloudfm. So quite a lot of you in this room will not have heard of Cloudfm. And back to the panel discussion that we had this morning, which I think was very interesting. We're a relative newcomer to the market. We've only been going since 2011. And we are here specifically for the point of trying to make contact with procurement professionals because we believe we are particularly disruptive in the FM market. And we want to reach out to some of you guys who are making the purchasing decisions to say, hey, we're out there. Not a hard sell, but you may be interested. Now, what I'm going to share with you today is a little bit about our experience of the FM market so far and a little bit about what we've noticed in the market and why we've come into existence. So firstly, I'm not an FM professional. I'm not in facilities management. I'm not an engineer. I've spent most of my former career as a ops director with Wix, with Lidl, and then latterly as a GM with BT. And pretty much most of my career, I've been sitting alongside you guys as an ops director, procuring things, buying call centres, buying outsourced services. Yes, I was the person who arranged the outsourced services for BT, who phoned you up in the middle of the day and try and sell you broadband. That was me. So I've always valued procurement, mainly because I've had to work alongside you guys, and if we mucked it up, I was the one who had to live with the consequences. And I have got 15 years multi-site retail experience, working my way up through that, and also then latterly did 7 years in telecoms and call centres. I joined Cloudfm 4 years ago now as a director, very much seeing the opportunity that they brought to the market and absolutely being disruptive to the FM industry. We're only 5 years, well, 5.5 years old, and these is our client base. You will notice TUI on there, and one of our customers was here earlier. Overrunning, I hasten to add. But that's the client base we've already got within 5.5 years. We're turning over about 65 million pounds as of right now. We look after 6,000 buildings nationwide, 1,400 restaurants, 150 multi-skilled engineers that are directly employed by us. But exactly what we were talking about in the panel discussion this morning, we look after an integrated supply chain that stretches across the UK and into Ireland, looking after all of those specialist services that we don't contract, but we do need on very regular basis. So that's a bit about me. So FM industry typically has been characterised by a relationship that rarely delivers. It promises a lot, it promises savings, it promises improvement in quality, but it doesn't. Unfortunately, typically we've reverted back to a relationship that costed on labour and parts, and for procurement, generally it's been commoditised. It's been you're trying to purchase a service but reduce it to a commodity. And all too often, it fails to meet spend commitments, it fails to meet the quality targets, and often it leads to disappointment, conflict, and a relationship that doesn't work. Now, what I want to do today is take you through why, in our experience, we believe some of those things happen. Also, the outcome, typically, and this is from, and I've heard this time and time again from procurement professionals, but also from consultants who procure on behalf of other companies, is that typically costs can increase year on year and quality stays the same. So, why is FM treated as a commodity? One of the things that we found is that, firstly, the FM industry is characterised by poor data. Again, back to the panel discussion we were talking, quite often you don't even know the baseline you're working with. You think you do, you think you've got your handle on the figures, but actually when it comes to taking that out to the marketplace, you have a lack of visibility and you have a lack of baseline data on your performance. what we've found is that this is based on all of the tenders we've received over about the last 4 or 5 years, that this is generally the way the market works. Around about 15% of the models that we receive are based on TFM, so Total Facilities Management, bundling up everything and trying to price that as an all-encompassing deal. Around 30% are just rates, so you look at how much does it take to call out a plumber, how much does it cost to call out, how much does it cost for a gas safety check on my premises. Then about 25% of those are rates plus a fixed price element, so rates plus, typically this happens in multi-site retail where they'll say, actually I'm quite happy with the service charge, I want a fixed cost for doing X number of premises, but then for all my reactive after that I want a model that gives me a call-out fee and an hourly rate. And then another ones, we've seen a number of even more sophisticated prices where some of them move into, actually I want a price for replacing 2 meters of ceiling tiles. I want a price for always coming out and repairing that shutter. And they fix prices, more like sort of starting to go into the measured term area of the business. And this is further complicated when we start getting external consultants involved. And I'm sure some of you use the services of external consultants, but quite often there are a number of businesses out there who are brought in to demonstrate a defined saving. And we'll look at your total spend, and then we'll be trying to make a defined saving on the basis of that, mainly to pay their wages. And because a clear baseline cost is not always known, unfortunately what happens is that rates are. So it reverts back to the commodity, which is rates. Because you know how much it's costing you to get 2 hours for a plumber. You know how much it's costing you to get a carpenter on site to repair a door. So you can charge on those rates, and that's typically where the market reverts to. Unfortunately, the actual spend governed by rate-controlled areas is very limited. What happens is that when you start going through this, if I looked at most of your P&L expenditure on maintenance, and I'm talking about hard services typically, that around about 15%, I'm bundling in this CapEx, but you could extract that for your P&L if you wanted, but around about 15% is CapEx, which is fixed price. So you needed a fridge replaced, you needed a dock leveler door replaced or something like that. That will be a CapEx thing, and it will be for a fixed fee, which you will agree the price of up front. So it's not even covered by rates. A further 15%, so I've done the CapEx, so the further 30% is quoted. So if you're doing you receive a price for £2,000 to put in a new reception desk, you'll have agreed that price, that's what you pay, there's no change to it. Then you've got 20% that's attributable to planned maintenance, so how much to go into your premises and replace all the fire extinguishers once a year, or check or maintain them, check your sprinkler system, and you'll get a fixed price for that. So actually around about 35% is actually attributable rates. But if that's the case then, how come you're procuring against rates? Because all of the other things that's in there, the 20% for PPM, the 15% for CapEx, and the 30% for quoted reactive, you've got very little way of controlling other than the person who actually signs off that quote. So only 35% is directly controlled by the rate card, and even then, about 30% of that 35% is parts. And how do you control those parts? And most of the time, when you actually see the cost of those parts, they actually arrive in your finance team. And there's probably not many of you that have got a finance team that's technically competent enough to check the cost of those parts are actually put. How much is a Daikin air conditioning unit? How much is what's a sensible cost for replacing a fire extinguisher? Your finance team don't know. And it's whether the people who actually get that have the visibility of making that. So, a little bit about, this is more strategic, it's going more out into the realms of what we see as a problem with the industry. A focus on rates absolutely prevents optimal outcomes for you, for your business, and what you're trying to achieve. And it's a bit about game theory, and it's back again, which I thought was really interesting in the discussion this morning. If you go into this with we're going to try and game our contractor or game our supplier to make a benefit at their expense, you will end up with suboptimal outcomes. So you want to demonstrate a saving from controlling the underlying costs. Absolutely, why wouldn't you? But if you do that in the wrong way, what happens is The best rates are often offered by the least transparent model. There are FM companies right now looking at your tenders and taking the figures and doing nothing more than taking 10% off your baseline costs and offering it back to you as a saving. That's all they do. It's a very, very simple model. And a lot of FM companies are just doing that. They have no underlying ability to actually say they're going to make the saving. They'll sell you the saving, but that's typically where some of these models are working. And then, there's a number of companies that have made significant growth in their business just out of doing that. You want to improve call-out rates for attendance. So you want to get a £50 call-out rate down to a £40 call-out rate, or you want to improve the service performance of that. So you procure on that basis. What happens, though, is that if you try and reduce that price too low, the engineer competency is degraded and the first fix is degraded, because all the FM company is going to do is saying, yeah, I'll give you a £30 an hour call-out rate, but I'll hit my SLA by sending the wrong engineer. I'll just send a general handyman, because you don't know whether he's a gas-competent engineer who's arrived on site or a handyman. I've met my SLA, and then what happens to that thing? Well, if you're lucky, you'll get a temporary fix. If you're not lucky, frankly, I'll just send it to quote. Now, two observations on this. Firstly, typically what we find is that in most of the companies that we get engaged with, their send to quote ratio from every single attendance on a reactive job is about 40%. So that means, basically, just call it a third. So 1 in every 3 attendances gets sent straight to a quote. What that means for you is you're not giving the service to your premises, but also you're significantly uplifting your costs. And it's sort of the law of unintended consequences. You try and drive down a cost somewhere and it appears absolutely somewhere else. And you want to reduce your reactive hourly rates for your engineers. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to get £25 an hour from a £30 an hour? And you will think that taking a £30 an hour down to £25 an hour will give you a linear reduction in costs. I can tell you it absolutely will not. And if anything, every single model we've seen that done by actually leads to an uplift in costs. The problem being is that a gas qualified engineer in central London at the moment with a catering ticket that can maintain gas on a restaurant will be paid upwards of £50,000 at the moment. And it's going up. All of you want competent engineers attending in your premises, but the amount of competent engineers in this country is reducing. And let's face it, with Brexit, it's probably going to get even harder. So constantly driving down the rates just means that you're going to get a less competent engineer attending on your premises, or you're going to end up spinning it out to another engineer who's going to send it to a quote. So send to quote volumes absolutely increase. You also want to look at your parts costs. So you want to try and control your parts costs. You want to try and understand exactly all your parts in use across your estate. What happens is that typically, and probably most of you will have done this, there's usually what's known as a known contractor markup, usually about 10 or 15% across parts. What's typically happening now is that contractors are making up their markup and making up the loss on their hourly rates in their markup on parts, which means that a Daikin air conditioning unit with a split system that you'll see in the standard office place will be charged to you at maybe £2,500 plus a 10% markup. The actual unit can be purchased for about £1,400. But who in your business is checking the 25,000 invoices that you receive every year on the basis of that? Okay. So, the market has then flipped to looking at total facilities management. So trying to come at it from a different way, how can we give certainty on these issues? How can we control our overall spend and give the service we require? So TFM promises a lot, but it has commercial complexities in it. And one of the things, I'm sure quite a few of you have had experience with TFM models, that it's very attractive, it provides a degree of cost certainty, but unfortunately, it incentivizes the provider to hit a pre-agreed cost threshold. Now, quite often, they can hit that by cheaper people, delay, defer, push it out into the new year, push it out into the next contractual year, cut corners, and bill for incomplete activity. Now, one of the major TFM contracts in central London has recently gone south because of exactly that reason. So a £250 million contract has gone south, has recently been moved to another contractor and was bailed out with, and will have legal ramifications that are going to go on for the next 5 years for exactly that reason, because it was a capped spend, and effectively the contractor got to, or the FM company got to the point of effectively doing no work, literally a lockdown. Revert back to the commercial model, we won't do any work. Work to rule. And the SLAs, and this is one of the things that, especially in FM, the SLAs and the performance measures are controlled by your provider. They tell you how well they're doing, because you've got no visibility of whether they've hit the SLAs. You've got 30, 40,000 jobs going through your system, and they tell you whether they've met their SLAs. I've never worked in an industry like it, but that's the way it works. So, and TFM is inherently flawed. And I'm just going to show you this model. For any successful FM contract, you need 4 key things. So firstly, you need to know your current spend. If you know your current spend, then you want to build a commercial model on that basis. You need to know your current job volume and activity. How do you know whether that's going to go up or whether that's going to go down, or whether the new provider is going to provide you with a better service? You need to retain P&L accountability for your managers, because if I took one of your warehouse managers and said, don't worry about it, whatever you spend, your FM next year is going to be £30,000, they'll keep on hitting the button. They're going to keep on phoning up. And you need to know what your estate is in terms of your known and consistent level of quality. It's not possible to have all of your premises looking like the Ritz. But you need to know what that baseline is, and you need to know what is an acceptable level of quality within your estate. Now, if you know that, and if you know all those 4 items at the start-up of a total facilities management contract, do you know those? Well, if not, the TFM contract is going to fail. Commercially, it will fail. It will fall over within 6 months, and after a year, you're going to be at loggerheads, because you've completely not. You're trying to game the system. You're trying to get something out that's going to give you a cost saving, but the person on the other side of that contract is thinking that they're going to game you. If you do know that, why go into a TFM contract in the first place? Because if you do know all of that, there's no point entering a TFM contract, because you've already got control of your estate. So why are you looking for cost certainty? You've already got that P&L control, and you've already got the grasp on it. So there's another way, and this is where it comes back to where we're looking. I don't want to get too ethereal on this, but I will say that, firstly, it comes down to one of the things that was, I think it was Caroline said towards the end of the morning session, very much about choosing the right commercial model. If you choose the right commercial model, you enter into a partnership where you're both incentivized to do the right thing at the right time. So construct a sustainable model that incentivizes both parties to do the right thing. I, as a supplier to companies, am not incentivized to game the model. I'm incentivized to provide the right service at the right time. And you, as a customer of mine, are incentivized to look after your part of the bargain. Control the provider and the supply chain with robust data. We have to have, if we're going to do this in a maintenance and FM industry, we have to have robust data. And it has to be, in terms of this, don't accept a model where you have no visibility. Don't think that just being promised 3.2 million a year is an acceptable conclusion. It won't be. It will fail. Ensure you have clear real-time view of all the activity. If you can't see the jobs that are flowing through the system, if you can't see a status of everything that's on your job, it's very easy for me as a provider just to switch it off, just to lose a couple of 100 jobs and not get them done, because you've got no visibility of those status. And this is typically what happens in the FM industry. And manage SLAs with hardwired data. You should see on real time where the performance is, and every single job that flows through the system, you should see whether it's met or failed its SLA. Now, FM, as in delivery suppliers, as in a lot of other commoditized services, you should be able to see that. And also, we talk about very clear process design. It's clear that just from a Lean Six Sigma point of view, you need a clear process where every single route along that journey has clear nodes and measurement points. So human intervention is only applied where necessary to add the value and the governance. One of the things that's brought up in the panel this morning, is which I didn't quite agree, is it very much applies to commoditized services when we're talking about the Amazons of this world and the Facebook-type models and this sort of thing. It's a commoditized service. Service delivery, it very often isn't and can't be set up like that. It has to be controlled at every step of the thing. And there are loads and loads of breakage points. It's not order a fire stick and it arrives on tomorrow morning. It's not that. It's about, I've ordered a job and there are 15 different ways that that job can break along that route before it actually provides with that service. And another 30 different routes it can go off into before it finally comes back to a conclusion at the end of it. And IT systems should improve the productivity of all of your people. They should improve the productivity and not degrade it. They shouldn't add to complexity. And you should eradicate the blind spots. So no hidden costs, lost jobs, failed processes. That's what you should do. So, getting our ducks in a row. If you have accurate baseline data, then you can achieve a defined spend commitment and improve quality. There needs to be an acceptance that if you're going to have those long-term sustainable partnerships, there needs to be a model where, and this is the way typically we work, the customer is responsible for the job volume. That means that your managers and your people in your businesses running the premises are responsible for the number of times they hit that button and the number of times they order things to be done. Because we still want them to be protecting your premises and looking after your assets. As a supplier, my role is then to manage the quality and the cost. So I need to get that job done effectively and for the minimum cost to the standards that you require. And we find that works as a sustainable commercial proposition. And we base that around average job value. Now I'm going to give you some figures. For anybody who wants to me to send you this pack, I'm more than happy to. So this is going to blow your mind, but don't worry about that. So this is a typical commercial model. And I was rather hoping it was going to be on a big screen, but it's on lots of little screens. But what we've done is, I don't know whether you can see, so what we've done in this is we've built a reactive spend, a PPM schedule, a capital expenditure model, and then a fixed cost, so our management fee and that sort of thing. And we build that up on a baseline, and our finance teams agree the baseline. So we sit down, our finance, our head of finance, commercial finance is sitting in the back there. We sit down and we agree that with your finance teams, and we do not come out of that room until everybody agrees the baseline. And because we know the volume of jobs, and we therefore know the average job value, we can build a commercial model that says, going forward, we commit to reduce that average job value. Now, if you carry on and that 9,840 becomes 15,000 because you want to increase the standards of your estate, fine, that's fine. But we will continue to reduce the average job value. Your planned maintenance schedule, so that's your fire extinguishers, your up and over doors, all the other things you want on your estate to repair, we can commoditize that, that's fine. We will put an engineer on site at a known time. And the other thing that we will do, in terms of what we do, is we manage currently 250,000 invoices across our estate, entirely paperless. Not a single paper invoice ever goes to one of our contractors. What we were saying in the panel this morning. There is no point using technology if you're increasing the workload on all of your customers. So I'm going to wrap it up then. I'm conscious that I was a bit pressed on time anyway. How are we doing for time?